Millionaire visits his ex-wife after 5 years. His one gesture broke her silence. The rain had been falling since dawn, slow and relentless, the kind that soaked into the ground and refused to leave. The black luxury car stopped in front of a narrow, aging apartment building where paint peeled like old scars and windows told stories of years gone by. The man inside the car was worth millions now, known by magazines, feared in boardrooms, admired on glowing screens. But as he stepped out onto the wet pavement, none of that mattered. His hands trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from the weight of 5 years of silence pressing against his chest. Before the story goes any further, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes hearts can heal, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach the people who need them most. 5 years earlier, he had walked away from this very place with pride intact and heart tightly sealed. Back then, success had been a distant dream, and frustration had lived in his bones. He had blamed her silence for his failures, her exhaustion for his anger, her quiet tears for his growing resentment. When the marriage ended, it ended without screaming, without closure, without warmth. Just two people turning their backs, each convinced the other would never understand. He left with ambition burning inside him. She stayed with memories and unanswered questions. The years changed him in ways money never could. His name grew powerful, his bank accounts endless, his schedule ruthless. He bought homes he barely slept in and cars he barely drove. Applause followed him everywhere, yet nights remained painfully quiet. In rare moments of stillness, his mind returned to a small kitchen with flickering lights, to hands folded nervously on a table, to eyes that once waited for him to come home. He told himself it was nostalgia, nothing more. But guilt has a way of surviving success. She had not remarried. Life had narrowed for her instead of expanding. The small apartment smelled faintly of old books and detergent. The walls held framed memories from a life she never expected to live alone. Work had become routine, not fulfilling but necessary. Friends had drifted away, each busy with families and futures. She spoke less as the years passed, not because she had nothing to say, but because no one seemed to truly listen. Silence became her armor. When the knock finally came, it felt unreal. She opened the door slowly, her face showing neither shock nor joy, only a guarded stillness shaped by years of disappointment. He stood there in a tailored coat, older, heavier in the eyes, stripped of the confidence that once defined him. The space between them was small, but it held 5 years of misunderstandings, unsent apologies, and unresolved pain. He did not rush inside. He did not explain himself. He simply stepped forward with a quiet humility that surprised even him. The apartment seemed to shrink around them as memories flooded back. He noticed things he had once ignored, the worn-out sofa, the cracked cup on the shelf, the faint tremor in her hands. This was not the life he had imagined for her, and that realization hurt more than any business loss ever had. He had come prepared with words, rehearsed apologies, and explanations shaped by regret. But standing there, he realized words were cheap. He had used too many of them in the past and meant too few. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a neatly folded envelope. It was not thick with money, not flashy, not dramatic. Inside was something far more personal. It contained every letter she had ever written to him during their marriage, letters he had never opened back then because he was always too busy, too tired, too angry. He had found them years later in an old box, unopened, yellowed with time. He had read them all, one by one, late at night, discovering a woman who had only wanted partnership, understanding, and presence. Alongside the letters was a handwritten note, simple and raw, acknowledging his failures without excuses, taking responsibility without conditions. Her breath caught as she recognized the familiar handwriting of her younger self. The past crashed into her without warning. For years, she had buried her feelings deep, convincing herself that silence was strength. But that small gesture cracked something inside her. No defense could protect her from the truth that she had been seen, finally, even if it came late. Tears welled up, not loud or dramatic, but heavy and freeing. The silence she had lived with for so long broke, not through words, but through emotion she could no longer contain. He did not step closer. He did not touch her. He allowed her the space she had been denied years ago. In that moment, power shifted. The millionaire standing in the doorway felt smaller than ever, while the woman who had been forgotten stood taller, finally acknowledged. The rain outside softened, as if the world itself was listening. They spent hours together without forcing conversation. Old memories surfaced gently. Regrets were present, but so was understanding. He learned about her struggles, her quiet victories, the strength it took to wake up alone every day. She learned that his success had come at the cost of constant emptiness, that ambition without love was a hollow achievement. There was no promise of reconciliation, no dramatic reunion. What existed was something rarer and more honest, closure mixed with respect. As evening settled, he stood to leave. Not because he wanted to escape, but because he understood that healing could not be rushed. At the door, he left one final thing behind. Not money, not gifts, but an offer written simply on paper, stating that if she ever needed support, not as an obligation or a favor, but as accountability for the past, he would be there. No conditions. No expectations. Before the ending, please comment below and tell us what you believe is harder, forgiving someone who left, or forgiving yourself for staying silent for too long. When the door closed, she did not feel abandoned. For the first time in years, she felt light. The silence that once suffocated her now felt peaceful. He walked back into the rain, no longer chasing applause, carrying a different kind of wealth within him. And if this story touched your heart, reminded you of someone you lost, or made you believe in the power of small gestures, please like, share, and comment on this video. Your engagement keeps these stories alive, and sometimes, a story is exactly what someone needs to begin healing.